Let's continue to unpack this story. We now look at the leadership legacy, particularly the political impact Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi had in South Africa. I'm now joined by leadership expert Dr. Mazwe Majola in studio. Thank you so much for joining us, Doctor. We do appreciate it. There's been lots that's been said about the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, and we can't dispute the fact that his legacy was a very complex one. Many would also say that his leadership was also a very complex one. Many would say he was very stern and strict in his leadership, and him being the founder of the IFP. What do you make of the legacy of the late Prince?
Yeah, good afternoon or good evening, Heidi. There are leaders who are leaders by titles and by positions. There are leaders who are called. And I want to believe that Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi was a called leader. This was a calling for him. The fact that he stood firm until the last day, he was still a leader. Many of us were criticizing and questioning him. Why is not retiring and go home and play with his grandchildren and great-grandchildren? But he continued to be the voice of wisdom, to be the pillar and the glue of the eNCA Freedom Party, being the coach and the mentor, being the elder in the National Assembly. Yes, he was a complex and enigmatic leader, and maybe that's what made him to stood the way he was, because really he is a person who lived by his personal convictions and values. When he and his principles as well. When he believed in something, he was unshakable. So. And I think we need leaders like that, because we need consistency. We need leaders who believed in themselves, and believed for what they stand for, so that no one will just come and shake them. We don't want to wishy-washy leaders.
So he was labelled an apartheid collaborator, and that part of his legacy, many are saying it's not the time to be speaking about that, but you can't not refer to the fact that the IFP was brought central to the massacres that happened in Gauteng. Him being labelled an apartheid collaborator, he was very vocal about how he was not an apartheid collaborator, and all that happened was to destabilize the IFP at the time. What do you make of how he handled that? Many would say that he should have apologized, especially after those IFP members confessed at the TRC that they were in fact instructed by the IFP to execute those massacres. Do you think that he handled that well, as a leader? Do you think that the way he reacted to being labelled an apartheid collaborator was the right way?
History will judge him. History will judge him. Obviously, those were very difficult times. Just like any other leader, there is no infallible leader. Leaders rise and fall. Leaders make mistakes. Leaders do right things. So indeed, I think there were a time when whether he was involved or his members, but obviously he was at the helm of the organization as a leader. So there will be those. Obviously that legacy will not indeed fade away. There was that time when the dark side of his leadership. However, leadership evolves. Leadership is contextual. Whatever happened, it happened at that time. There were causes, there were contexts, there were reasons for. Obviously, there may not have been correct things to do, and at the same time, we must also look at what other things that he did, the good things that he did. In terms of apologizing, I think there was a time when he apologized. Maybe It was not an apology that people wanted. And also, I know that towards his last days, he really had this firm wish for the IFP and ANC to reconcile before he died. You know, he stated repeatedly that he would like to see the ANC and IFP coming to, or rather finding each other, you know, making peace.
So as much as he was a political leader and very firm in that role, he was also a leader in his traditions and in his culture. Being the Prime Minister of the AmaZulu nation, being a prince, he made it very known and very clear that traditional leaders should also have a role in government. Till the very last day, as you've mentioned, really trying to fix whatever is happening in the royal family at the moment. He's also been acknowledged for that important role that he played culturally and traditionally, even reintroducing the reed dance. Many would say that it was his way of reinforcing the Zulu culture and stamping that authority. What did you make of that part of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi?
So he was all in one. He was an intellectual. Someone who just put a suit and a tie and go and speak good English, whether in Parliament or overseas or anywhere. And he would just go and put his Zulu attire whenever he had to go to attend to traditional. He was not ashamed of that. And he really, so he was an intellectual, he was a traditionalist, he was a religious person. He played a significant role in building, sustaining and maintaining the Zulu culture and the tradition. And that is why even now, today, the Zulu nation is a very respected tribe or nation over the world because of its tradition, of its culture. They are not ashamed to dress or wear the Zulu attire wherever they are, no matter you are a degreed person or you are what. So he really led that. And also he promoted the traditional politics or kings and chiefs system to the point that even other nations and tribes were inspired and they started theirs as well. We've got the Controlessa now, we've got the House of Tradition in Parliament because of him, because he really was very instrumental in all those systems.
Yeah, very good point you make there. And I just want to end off by speaking about what now, because I would say that the royal household has lost their anchor. They've lost their prime minister. The IFP have lost their founder, their president. And what is it going to look like now moving forward without Mangosuthu Buthelezi? I'll quickly tell you a funny story. I was in Greece a month ago, well, not a month, about 2-3 weeks ago, and my father said to me, is Mangosuthu Buthelezi still going strong? And I said, Dad, I actually think he's going to live a lot longer, because you just can't really imagine a world without him, because he was so strong and so steadfast and literally carried on till the very last day. What do you think it's going to look like moving forward without Mangosuthu Buthelezi?
It's going to be striking, and I'm very worried about the IFP, you know, because even though in 2019 he stepped down and then they elected the new president in the name of eNCA Velenkosini Hlabisa to be the new leader. But as you know, that they continue to use his image as the party's brand, even in the last elections. So next year or this coming election, it will be the first time where the IFP will go to the election without Mangosuthu's face or image, which I think it will be now Hlabisa's image. So it's going to be very difficult for the organization to really continue without his inspiration. However, this is a time for Hlabisa to rise up and take charge and be a leader. I foresee, which unfortunately I hope they will prove me wrong, but I foresee some infighting, divisions and factionalism within the party, because Mangosuthu was a glue and was a pillar, and whenever this thing happened, at least they always respected him. When he said no, or it will be done like this, they respect. Now that is no more there. Certain people will rise up, and there will be, obviously fighting, jostling for positions, so I just hope that they will be able to stay united until next year, and obviously until forever, for the sake of Mangosuthu's legacy. It will be difficult also for Mrs. Zulu. Mrs. The King, Mrs. Zulu. Of course, yes, he has been already crowned as the king, but he relied a lot on Mangosuthu's counsels and guidance. You know that they're still continuing in fighting and tension, and the court laws and court battles that are continuing. So it's still going to be difficult for them to live without Mangosuthu.
It's going to be an interesting time ahead, but thank you so much for your insights, and thanks for coming into studio. We do appreciate it. That was leadership expert Dr. Mazwe Majola.